These days, it's assumed that if things are important, they can only be done the hard way. Everything that is easy is usually trivial. We must question this assumption. A simple way to do this is whenever some problem comes into our life is all about, I think, mastering the subtleties that exist within you, which has been given to you by that source of creation, by God, whatever you want to call it. Yo guys, namaskaram. So today I wanted to talk about the state of flow. So have you observed in life that sometimes when you're overburdened with many things, you completely lose sight of everything? The things that usually make life hard for you are unresolved emotions towards someone or something. So, as per the perceptual load theory in cognitive psychology, our brains are wired to prioritize emotions with a high affective value, such as fear, anger, resentment, greed, which often drains us of precious energy to devote to good things. The other thing can be that you are usually physically tired to such a point that everything seems a burden. If we are not physically well rested, our brains do not function at the most optimum quality. The type of food you put into your system also determines the level of tiredness that the body would feel, generally speaking. The trend of intermittent fasting is quite popular these days, wherein a sufficient break of, let's say, 6 to 8 hours is advisable between two large meals. Keeping your stomach empty helps you to be more productive. The third thing is to make complex things into simple ones. These days, it's assumed that if things are important, they can only be done the hard way. Everything that is easy is usually trivial. We must question this assumption. A simple way to do this is whenever some problem comes into our life, we must remember the purpose as to why we are doing that thing, or the end goal, if I might say, and then ask, like I quote, is there an easier way of doing this thing than the standard chosen path which everyone around me says, or how I feel about it? I think language also kind of shapes a lot of our thinking. It's a major tool. So to take an example, let us say, observe these common cliches. It's easy for you to say, the inherent assumption is that we just don't want to validate the opinion of others, and let's say use this phrase as a subtle way to criticize that person for doing that thing. We think that everything that is worthwhile comes through hard work. Maybe it comes through making your work simple and working consistently at it for a long time. The reason something feels hard initially is because we haven't found an easier way to do that thing. So consider a master of any field. Initially, if he's doing that thing, he might say it's hard, but then as he kind of goes more and more deeper into that thing, the art of mastering is nothing but just removing the unessential items for that thing and just doing that thing from the basics of what it actually is. So, nothing valuable is hard. I think everything is easy. I must find the right way to just do that thing until it clicks with me if you're devoted to it. Sometimes trying too hard makes it even harder to get the results that you want. Why do we have this assumption that we must overdo everything in order to achieve more? So, there's this very famous thinking model called the inversion thinking model. So, what this basically means is that you turn an assumption upside down and you kind of work backwards. So, usually situations are simple in life. We overcomplicate them by adding a layer of emotions and making it quite hard for us to see that thing clearly. The problem gets solved when you just accept the situation for what it is and start taking responsibility. Either you can solve it or maybe just leave it at that and position yourself towards making more conducive situations for your own life. So, whenever in a situation, always ask this question: what are the underlying assumptions here that I'm taking for granted that are fucking me up? Strategy is nothing but solving the easiest problems first. Look for opportunities that are highly valuable but also relatively simple and easy. So remove complexity to make the path easier so that tiny efforts leads to massive results and changes. Replace complaints with the feeling of gratitude. It helps you move more into an abundant mindset. If we always focus on the things that we lack, there would soon come a time when all the things that we do have, that is, our precious mental resources and the time with limited people, even our own health, would all go in vain. However, if we focus on what we have, we can always make efforts to get those things that we lack slowly and steadily, since we wouldn't react compulsively to things but respond consciously. Whenever you are complaining, become conscious of it and try replacing it, maybe with gratitude, or let's say towards to a more positive emotion. So if you're facing any hardship, you can say, okay, I think I'm getting this hardship right now in life. It's fine, but it's making me stronger and maybe more wiser in the process. So there's also this very famous tool which was given to us by the late Harvard Business School professor. Its name is Clinton Christensen. So, usually he says that whenever we are having any negative emotions, it could be feelings of grudge, resentment, or anything, it's usually helping you do a job. So, what this basically means, that he goes on to say that, like, we don't usually buy products or services, but hire them to do a job for us. So I think if we use the same analogy, we can always ask this, that okay, what job does this grudge helps me fulfill? Accept reality for what it is. It is not about punishing people and holding their thoughts in your mental space, but just letting go of their bullshit. It really helps you free your time to become more creative in the world. Life is too short. So, Sherlock Holmes is admired by people because of his astute quality of observation. We all have eyes, but how many of us use them to observe things that are just there in plain sight? It's the art of not letting your mind wander when you're conversing with someone, the art of not thinking about your past and the future, and the art of ignoring all the noise in the environment is something that we really need to master. Life is all about, I think, mastering the subtleties that exist within you, which has been given to you by that source of creation, by God, whatever you want to call it. So, I think one more thing would be that if you're wearing burnout as a badge of honor, then there is something probably wrong with the way you're approaching life. Our culture celebrates burnout, but then who wants to listen to the majority of the voices? Whenever something precious or noble falls into the hands of the majority, people distort things. It's like when Osho says, when you add the word ism to any great founder, it becomes a mob. Buddha had its own beautiful way for the world to see. But when Buddhism comes, it has been divided into so many sects of the world and it has been distorted to God knows only what standards. The same can be go to, let's say, Hinduism, Muslims, and a lot of other famous religions. So the idea here is that the more the mob becomes a part of something beautiful, the more corrupt it becomes, because a mob can only attach meaning to the ways of the past. They can only be attached to a certain sense of as to how it was. Religion in its true entirety should be something that inspires people and gives fresh hope to them. And let's say rejuvenate their spirits. It's the only way to get a sense of hope in this world and become more creative. But I think all major religions right now are trying to curb the creativity of the people, in the vision with which the founder kind of established that thing was to help people blossom. Every person has their own voice of truth. The important thing is you should not give opinions, advice, and judgments, but remove yourself from the equation and help the person remove those judgments that block his clarity. Motivation is not the problem. The problem is finding the right systems, or maybe even building that for your own self, and then asking, how can we make the most essential things the easiest to execute? So, this is also inspired by Greg McNaughton. So he has written these two books called Effortless, and the other one was Essentialism. Yeah. So I think fundamentally the idea here is to just kind of focusing on the most essential things and making them the easiest to execute. How can you make the most pointless things in your life more harder? I think that is how we kind of transform certain things and maybe just help us get into that state of flow which kind of exists in everyone, wherein you're kind of zoned out. But anyhow, this is a small video which I wanted to do, and let me know what you feel about it. Until then, this is Debashish Pindra from Debukidastak signing off. Cheers.